You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Radio Show, only on Financial News and Talk. Now live in studio, your host, local and national real estate expert and consumer advocate, Ron Siegel.
And hello again. Welcome to Ron Siegel Radio. This is the show with no real boundaries as we discuss current events, financial markets, politics, sports, even poking fun at the rest of the media. This is the show that connects the dots of confusion delivered by conflicting media reports. We connect the dots so you know the actions you can take, how your family or business can benefit from current events. Most of all, thank you for joining me. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day. We have a very focused show. We only chat about items that affect the roof over your head, your bank account, and anything I feel would benefit you. But before we get into our intriguing content today, please join me in welcoming our featured guest. Todd Ballenger, Barrow Smart University, is with us. Welcome, Todd.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you with us. And let me remind you, if you ever have any home or finance-related questions, I am the consumer advocate looking out for you. And you can reach out to me directly, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. Just remember, that's the number you call anytime for assistance. When you call that number, it comes directly to me first. There are operators standing by.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
While I do have a great team when it comes to developing a financing plan, a plan to save you money, I personally work with you. Even if you don't have any needs today, save this number in your phone for future reference, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. 1990, and of course we are celebrating today. We celebrate every day on Ron Siegel Radio. It's a great day right here. Let's see what we can celebrate today. There's one that's very timely. I don't know if we planned it this way. You know, I just go and do what I'm told. Well, it's not this one though. It's National Blueberry Pie Day today. Having beaten anorexia, I am always looking for blueberry pie. Even though this one looks like it's a blueberry cheesecake, but that's okay. I like it. Well, I drool too much, so I better stop and let's get moving on. Today is National Teach Children to Save Day. I didn't know that, but it's a great topic for us as we speak with our guest, Todd Ballenger, today. You know, as you borrow smart, maybe even want to teach our kids to save. Unfortunately, in the schools near me, they're not teaching kids anything at all about finance, about saving, about, I don't know. If you're not as old as me, maybe, I don't know, maybe your schools taught this, but we had something called home economics. And we actually spent, a full semester. They did it in conjunction with driver's ed. And I know the schools don't have driver's ed now, but luckily we had home economics and you got to figure out how to work a mortgage and pay your bills and carry a file folder around at the time. And we had a checkbook. I know checkbook. Yeah, we had a checkbook. I don't think young people even know anything about a checkbook anymore, but we had a checkbook. We had to reconcile the checkbook during the semester. And we used to learn how to save. Now I kid about this because I started working at 7 years old. My dad felt that he started young. I could start young. I got to enjoy my first 2 years of working, cleaning toilets in his warehouse. So every dirty job he could find, that's what I got to do for the whopping rate of 25 cents per hour. Now, when you're 7 years old, 25 cents an hour sounds like a lot of money, but I didn't get all of it. I actually got taxed 50%. Well, I called it a tax later in my later years. My dad actually told me that I had to take 50% of everything I earned and put it into a savings account that he had signing authority on. Obviously, I was 7 years old, no signing authority. So 50% of everything I earned went into a savings account. What do you think about that? Are you doing that with your kids? Just throw that out there. It was great because when I graduated college, where do most people live when they graduate college? Well, not in mom and dad's basement like we're doing right now, but with a fraternity brother, I went and bought a house, bought a condominium. Yes, I did not rent. We did not lease. We bought the condominium right out of college. It was a partnership. We're still friends to this day. Our wives, or his ex-wife and my wife, don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But I digress. because of having that learning to save all the way back then, worked out really, really well. And let's move right along. Hey, you know something? I cannot pass this up because I might have to start celebrating early. I might have to take the bride tonight. Tomorrow is Shrimp Scampi Day. Love shrimp scampi. And Saturday is Oatmeal Cookie Day. So I'm going right through. You can tell I've beaten anorexia, so we're moving right along. Let's take a look at the markets. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 155 points. S&P is up 33. The NASDAQ is up 75. Oil up $1.89 a barrel. Should I look at it? I don't know if we want to, but I haven't done this week, so I will give you these numbers. Todd, am I right that you're in North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
I am very, very envious of you because gas prices, North Carolina today, on average, $3.82 a gallon. Now, contrast us in California. We are at $5.69 a gallon.
Ow!
And yeah, we had another tax increase on gas going into effect. I think it's on Sunday. Over 25% in taxes. Now, the queen of our team, Jody's in Arizona at $4.55 a gallon, and our tremendous underwriter, Lori, well, she's out there in a land very similar to Todd. She's at $3.85 a gallon. $4.14 is the national average. And yes, now, even the oil-producing state of Hawaii, oh, no, they don't produce gas there. $5.26 a gallon in Hawaii, $5.69 in California. Unbelievable. But hey, let's move right along. I've been telling you right along, especially as some of the prices go up in interest rates. We've seen a tremendous amount of interest rates going up lately. I told you what's going to cause interest rates to drop a little bit. It will be the recession that's coming. Now, I might be off. There may be a bit of a challenge here with what I'm thinking, because I've told you right along that I thought we would have a recession that would be starting late in 2022, maybe early 2023. Now, what is the definition of a recession? Well, basically, going just from the layman's terms, it's 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. Now, there is a board that really is the one that calls recessions, if we want to get technical about it. But today we got the first reading of Q1 GDP, and we've got a negative 1.4%. So are we already in the recession? Yeah, maybe. We're starting to see with all of this inflation that's going around and prices. Now, I know, oh, no, they're not telling us it's transitory anymore. I guess maybe the prices are going to stay up. But the bottom line is we're watching these things very closely, because I've told you before, if you are borrowing smart, which is part of our conversation today, which will be the context of what we're doing, you're doing that cash out refi debt consolidation right now, even though interest rates are high, because you're going to pay a little at premium for the cash out function of that loan. But as rates drop during the recession, and yes, they will, probably the beginning of next year, that'll be the time to restructure again and get the lower rate, but you've already taken advantage of having done that cash out. So we're going to talk about smart debt when we come back. We're going to also chat a bit. We've got our Mortgage Minute, what you need to know about selling in a seller's market, and more. You can reach me anytime. Our off-air number, it's 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the numeral 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Do you know a homeowner experiencing divorce? Do you know a real estate reference and the divorce decree could cost tens of thousands of dollars? A certified divorce mortgage planning and real estate report could save you thousands of dollars, and it's free from your local certified divorce lending professional. Reach out to Ron today. RonIsMyLender.com. Again, ronismylender.com. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. The Mortgage Minute today being brought to you by our friends at Geneva Financial. When you're ready for that next home loan, Geneva's got the programs and the products. You just need to make the call, 800-306-1990. Let's take a look at the markets today. The S&P 500 up 31. 10-year Treasury up 5 basis points. Mortgage-backed securities, they're down 8 basis points. Now, the 10-year Treasury, that's the yield, the interest on that is up. And on the mortgage-backed securities, you're seeing that the bond itself is down, as I speak right now, 9 basis points, which means interest rates are up. But let's get to what legitimately is going on in interest rates, because I did watch this morning, and Freddie Mac came out with their mortgage market survey for today, and they said that interest rates dropped a little bit this week. You know better than that. But 5.1% is the number they came up with. Last year, same week, 2.98%. But again, is it legitimate? Did the rates are they really at 5.1? Did they really drop this week? Well, I'm going to tell you.
It is what it is.
OBMMI provides the most comprehensive, accurate, timely, and interactive analysis of pricing ever conducted in the mortgage industry, calculated from actual locked rates with consumers across 35% of all mortgage transactions nationwide. And they came out with their report this morning, which is basically yesterday's data, that loans locked at 5.317. 5.317 is where they've locked at. So are the rates down or are the rates up? Yeah, they're actually up a bit. And as I mentioned, when we look at this from OBMMI, they're giving us exactly what loans locked at yesterday. So no matter what that's the average. Now, there could be some higher, some lower, but no matter what you're hearing on the news, on commercials, on the radio, wherever, except for here, that's the exact number of what they're doing. Why is that happening? Well, we got Q1 GDP showed that growth was down 1.4%, which was much lower than a 1% increase. Want to see how they spin this one. This comes after a 6.9% print in Q4, which was mostly due to inventory build. The decline in GDP for Q1 is another sign of potential recession. We'll get 2 more revisions to this figure before getting the final figure in June. An old textbook definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of GDP, which will not be confirmed until September because of the look back and 3 revisions. Initial jobless claims measures individuals filing for unemployment benefits for the very first time, decreased 5,000 to 180,000. Continuing claims, which are those continued to receive benefits after their initial claim, decreased 1,000 to 1.41 million. This is the lowest number of continuing claims since February 1970. Unemployment claims are extremely low and the labor market remains tight. Remember, a recession always follows an uptick of the unemployment number. So last month we came out, or earlier this month, we came out and reported 3.6. If we were to see a 3.7 or 3.8, that's the indicator that usually within about 160 days, we will be in a recession. That's just historic numbers. We don't guarantee things on Ron Siegel Radio. Death and taxes, I guess we can guarantee that those are going to continue. And here in California, they're going to the taxes part will continue to go up. That's the Mortgage Minute, brought to you by our friends at Geneva Financial. When you're ready for that next home loan, Geneva's got the programs and the products. You just need to make the call. This morning, we're honored to have Todd Ballenger. Borrow Smart University is with us. Good morning, Todd.
Hey, good morning, Ron.
So we're going to chat about borrowing, and everybody talks about the idea of borrowing. Is borrowing good or is borrowing bad?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on why you're borrowing for some people, right? Some people borrow out of need. and some people borrow out of opportunity. So one question I always ask is, why is someone borrowing? Do they need to borrow, meaning they can't pay cash, or do they choose to borrow because they realize that there's a better opportunity for their money?
That's an interesting concept, because we've had a lot of folks, not as much in the last 90 days where interest rates have been crazy, but last year we were telling people that, hey, you know something, if you can borrow at 2.5%, 3.5% and invest and get in Orange County, California, where we broadcast, Todd, you wouldn't have this data, but in Orange County, California, we look at it in our history on real estate is that we appreciate here over the last 63 years at 5.37%. So if you can borrow it 2.5%, 3.5%, and get a 5.37%, I tell people that that's probably a good borrowing. Now, what do you say as the expert?
Well, yeah, if you think about it, so if you get a 5.3% return, that's on the property itself. So if you paid cash for the house, you earn 5.3. If you put 10% down and borrowed 90%, you actually got a 53% return on that money over that same time period, because of the leverage. Because leverage works both ways, right? When you're investing and when you're borrowing, and very few people pay cash for houses. So, you can get an investment property that earns that kind of return. The more borrowing, the more leverage you have, and therefore the higher return on your actual investment.
Yeah, and especially now I know there's other parts of the country where people can borrow or they can pay cash. It's not too difficult. Again, I'm just using Orange County, California. Median home price is $1,031,000. That's the median. So when we look at it, when I talk to people all over the country like you do, in many parts of the country, their total cost for the property is about the same as our down payment over here.
Yeah,
right.
It's amazing. Like you said, our gas is cheaper here. Our housing is cheaper here too.
Might be a little benefit then, a little trade-off.
Exactly.
So I hear people and there's other radio hosts out there that talk about, just pay off the most expensive item first on the highest interest rate. If you've got credit card debt or student loan debt, if we ever have to pay that, but if you have credit card debt, 20, 25, 30%, am I better off paying that first or paying off my mortgage or a combination, or how do you deal with borrowing smart?
Yeah. So you always want to look at your cost of borrowing. We call that EPR, which is your effective percentage rate. So for example, on a credit card at 18%, your effective percentage rate is 18%. That's what you're paying on that debt. You might have a personal loan at 10 or 12%. You might have a student loan, as you were saying, at 4 or 5. You might have a mortgage at 3 or 4. If you're going to pay debt off, when you pay that debt, you're earning the return of whatever that interest rate is, right? So I'm going to pay 18% on that credit card debt this month. Let's say I got $1,000 credit card debt and I'm paying 18%. Paying that $1,000 off is like earning 18%. If I paid off my mortgage with an extra $1,000, I saved myself 3.5% in interest on the mortgage because that was my cost. So I think of paying off debt as I would investing. I want to invest in what's going to provide me the highest return, which is going to be the highest interest rate that I have. And I can't get 18% risk-free anywhere, right? So I would definitely want to pay off that credit card debt first. And you want to keep coming down the stack, until you get to the stuff where you have to start scratching your head. And usually that line for me is around the mortgage. Now, if you can get, like we have an auto that we purchased and the dealer offered us 5 years, 0% financing. I take that all day long and I would never pay that off, right? Because I'm getting the free use and control of that money for 5 years at 0%. And a mortgage is much the same way. It typically falls in that area where you have to ask yourself, if my mortgage rate's 10% and I'm prepaying the mortgage, I'm earning 10% by paying that interest off. If it's 3 or 4%, you have to start scratching your head and saying, all right, is this the highest and best use of my money to prepay the debt Or are there places that I could earn more over the next 10, 20, 30 years? And that's, one consideration is that return, right?
That's a great way of thinking about it, because you really, if it's coming out of your pocket or you're not coming out of pocket, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, if I have to pay that 18% or not pay 18%, I'd rather not pay it.
Absolutely.
So we're better off.
And not spending money is the same as earning money in some cases, right?
Can I tell that to my wife?
Sure.
She doesn't listen to us, but I don't know if that'll go over too well. But the bottom line there is so we want to be looking at that. Now, we talk on the program, Todd, about a blended household interest rate, where we look at weighting the averages of all of our debt. Is that something that you're comfortable with, or are we on the wrong track there?
No, I mean, if you blend, for example, if you had $1,000 credit card debt at 18% and a $50,000 debt at 10%, right? That 10% is going to carry a lot more weight in your blended overall cost of borrowing. So we call it the same thing. It's like your macro EPR, which is your total EPR, is all of your borrowing, and looking at that and saying, all right, if I took all of my borrowing at the different amounts and the different rates, and let's just say it averaged right now 7%, that's when, consolidating, like you said, or refinancing to consolidate, that can make a lot of sense, because now I can say, I'm going to take this average 7%. And what's my average if I were to refi and consolidate it? Maybe I average it all down to 4%, right? Now I've just had a pretty nice increase in my cash flow. Now, the key there is, if you do that, the cash flow can't fund an expanded lifestyle in that instance. You want to use that freed up cash flow initially to either accelerate the payoff of that debt at the lower rate, because now the same payment is going to pay that debt off much faster, because my friction or my headwind, like if I was sailing and I had a 7 knot wind against me, now I only have a 3 knot wind against me, I can actually go much faster. I can pay that debt off much faster. So, it's a good thing to look at, is to look at the blended, and you want the minimum friction. And interest rate is just a friction towards future financial goals that you may have, and you want to get the lowest amount of friction possible so you can build wealth.
Great concept. I'm glad we're on the same page on that. And if you want to know more information or get an example of something like that, visit rsrrapidpayoff.com. rsrrapidpayoff.com, where we actually did an analysis, and we use something called a total cost analysis. And we go through and demonstrate what happens if we pay that off. And I don't remember which one's on there on rsrrapidpayoff.com, but I think we demonstrated like a family that saved $1,800 a month. Now, can you imagine putting an extra $1,800 a month? Maybe you don't do all of it. Maybe you only did $1,500 a month toward paying down that mortgage. Think about how much quicker that's going to be. You're listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate, current events, and the financial markets. More with Todd Ballenger when we come back. What you need to know about selling real estate in a seller's market and more. You can reach me anytime. Our off-air number, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com, facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the numeral 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio, your home and mortgage connection.
Do you know a homeowner experiencing divorce? Do you know a real estate reference and the divorce decree could cost tens of thousands of dollars? A certified divorce mortgage planning and real estate report could save you thousands of dollars, and it's free from your local certified divorce lending professional. Reach out to Ron today. RonIsMyLender.com. Again, RonIsMyLender.com. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions, as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. The real-time real estate segment today being brought to you by the area trusted real estate professionals of Ron Siegel Radio. Visit rsrhomescout.com, rsrhomescout.com. Get the best information on properties available for sale over 97% of the country. Hey, your local real estate professional has the local information, rsrhomescout.com. 97% of the entire United States is there. And if you hit the fourth tab over, you can actually see the value of your property, your specific address, based on 4 different valuation models. What you need to know about selling real estate in a seller's market. Even if you haven't been following real estate news, you've likely heard about the current seller's market. That's because there's a lot of talk about how strong market conditions are for people who want to sell their houses. But if you're thinking about listing your house, you probably want to know, what does being in a seller's market really mean? What is a seller's market? The latest existing home sales report from the National Association of Realtors, NAR, shows housing supply is still very low. There's a 2-month supply of homes at the current sales pace nationwide. Historically, a 6-month supply is necessary for a normal or neutral market where there are enough homes available for active buyers. That puts today deep in seller's market territory. The impact of housing inventory on home prices, if you're watching us on RonSiegelRadio.tv, any of our socials, or the ABC News and Talk AM 1490 video feed, you're seeing a chart that shows the impact of monthly housing inventory on homes. When the supply of houses for sale is as low as it is right now, it's much harder for buyers to find homes to purchase. That creates increased competition among purchasers, which can lead to more bidding wars. And if buyers know they may be entering a bidding war, they're going to do their best to submit a very attractive offer up front. This could drive the final price of your house up. And because mortgage rates and home prices are climbing, serious buyers are motivated to make their purchase soon before those two things rise further. That means if you put your house on the market while supply is still low, it will likely get a lot of attention from competitive buyers. Bottom line, the current real estate market has incredible opportunities for homeowners looking to make a move. Listing your house this season means you'll be in front of serious buyers who are ready to buy. Give me a call at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. No, I do not list houses. I have a real estate license that I don't use. I'm not qualified to use it. We lead a lending team, but I know great real estate professionals anywhere in the sound of my voice. Continue our conversation this morning. Todd Ballenger, Borrow Smart University, is with us, and we're talking about borrowing money the right way and maybe even investing it, or is borrowing investing? And maybe we're even talking about the idea of a secure retirement. Can you have a secure retirement if you're significantly in debt? So what do you think, Todd?
Yeah, so I kind of want to build, if you don't mind, on that, what we were talking about before, about, let's say you have that couple that saves the $1,800 a month on the consolidation, right?
Right.
You can accelerate the payoff of the home by putting that $1,800 a month towards that payoff, and that would pay it off much faster. And let's just say the interest rate's 4%. You're earning 4% on that $1,800 a month as you pay down that debt. But when you're talking about building wealth for the future, most of us want to live indoors most of our lives. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And it costs money to live indoors. That's something I've found to be true.
And I've adopted that saying from you.
Oh, good. And you're going to do that for a long time. So, if you're 50 or 60, you still could be living indoors for 30, 40 more years, right? So that $1,800 a month could go towards accelerating the debt payoff in the house. It could also be put in a side fund where you work with a trusted, financial professional and say, starting today, I want to be debt-free faster. I'm going to put $1,800 a month into, say, an investment account that might earn 4%, 5%, 8%, depending on dividends and capital growth. Not over the next year. Like you said, we may be going into a recession, but we've never had a period of more than 18 months of loss before the market turns right back around. This is going back, since the beginning of time. The market typically goes from left to right on an upward trajectory. So if you put that $1,800 a month into this side fund, even if the market goes down, you keep buying over years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. If that return on that account is higher, you have the flexibility to be debt-free when you choose to be debt-free. But you also, there's something else. We're talking about investment return, but people forget about the other two legs of the investment stool, which is safety and liquidity. You know, whenever you're thinking about investing or building wealth, you have to think about what's the safety of the investment, what's the liquidity of the investment, and what's the return. And a lot of people don't realize that if they plow a lot of money into their house, large down payments or accelerated payoffs, if they need that money for any reason, how do they get it out? It's difficult. And if you look, I remember an article years ago about life events that lead to liquidity challenges, like a divorce or a death in the family or losing a job. When that happens, you often can't get access to that money right away, right? It sort of becomes an obstacle. So thinking about liquidity is important, as well as safety, you know, when you're thinking about, you know, where to locate this money, which you're so good at, because you're helping people to kind of think about where does this money get allocated to create the highest and best path for me. And return is important, liquidity is important, safety, at least those three things ought to always be considered.
Great information. And one of the things that I'm going to throw out as well is, you know, back in the 90s and turn of the century, I should say the turn of the century, it makes me sound old. But way back then, we used to have this conversation, and Todd, you might have had it also, because I know you were in financial services, was that when the water cooler talk is all about how great the stock market is, that's generally the time to get out. Yeah. And I just heard this morning that right now, 60% of the population is afraid of the stock market. 60%. To me, that's usually about the time we might want to be getting in. I'm not giving financial advice here, but just historically. Now, and I love what your concept is there, Todd, because why would I ever want to pay off my mortgage? And I just consulted with a family yesterday. They have 3 free and clear properties and can't get a loan, right? So they've got great equity. They've got a 7-figure equity portfolio, but you know, they're having a little challenges. We never know what those challenges are. If that money was in that side fund that you just talked about, they wouldn't have any liquidity issues.
Absolutely, Ron. And so I was going to go back to your question. I always ask people talk about, I don't want to be in debt. I'm like, all right, well, define debt the way we talked about it when we opened the show. Are you choosing to be in debt, or do you need to be in debt? Because if you have $5 million cash and you owe $3 million in commercial and residential notes, would you say that person is in debt? Well, technically, yes, they have debt, but are they in debt? And I say there's a difference between having debt and being in debt. In debt implies that you have something that you've got to pay off. And in this case, I'm saying I've got $5 million cash and I got $3 million in debt. When I'm in debt, that's the bank's problem, not my problem. When I have everything paid off, it's my problem, because now, like you said, your customers are having to find a way to access, use, and control the wealth they have in those properties. It's their problem. If they owed 100%, let's say on all those properties, they've got the cash, they have maximum flexibility, and it's the bank's problem, right? And that's where I always like to ask, who am I enriching? If I have a house and I put 50% down instead of 10% down, who did I enrich? I just made the bank's risk really low, and I increased my risk dramatically when I could have controlled the same asset with only 10% down or 20% down to avoid PMI. So, again, ask yourself, who are you really helping here? And I like to play to win when it comes to the big banks and financial institutions, because that's the way they play, right? And ask yourself, is what I'm doing good for me or good for the bank?
That's a great thought, because I share with folks all the time that if it's a double issue, and I want to get your take on this, Todd. So I have people come to me and say, something, Ron, I just would feel better if I owed nothing on my mortgage. And my comment is that from a numeric standpoint, nobody can prove me wrong that that's not a good financial investment. From an emotional standpoint, am I challenged there with having that thought? How do I help somebody get through that emotional side of, are they better off having that free and clear property or having a mortgage on it? How do you recommend we get through that part?
Oh, that's such a great, it's one of my favorite conversations. I'll give you kind of two answers. One, I used to sit down with couples and I noticed something. The husband, and I'm stereotyping here, but they typically use the word house. And the wife would often use the word home. And as you were talking about a mortgage or finances, they would, the husband would say, the house this, the house that. And the wife would say, well, but the home, I want to pay the home off. And the husband's, yeah, but, we have a mortgage on the house. And what I realized was we have a two-sided brain, right? Left and right sided brain. And home is really doesn't exist. It's an experience that you have living in a house. The house is the physical asset. It's the brick, it's the gutters needing clean out, it's the mortgage, it's the taxes that are due and stuff like that. So what I used to do is say, look, at the end of the day, the emotional decision of the home often trumps the logical decision around the house. And that's okay. If that's what's important to you, the home can trump the house. But make sure you understand that you're talking about two different things. Because as you said, financially, I can show you again and again and again where it's almost never a really good idea financially to pay off the house. But some people have a hard time living in the house, meaning they struggle to be in a home with a lot of debt. And that's the emotional sort of component. So the second part of this answer is I would come up with what I'd call a strategy to sort of cheat the two. And I'd say, all right, look, what you really want is to be free of a payment. Right. And so oftentimes to pay off a $200,000 home right now, if you have a $200,000 mortgage, you would need $200,000. Right. If that's your balance. But I'd say, what if we put $100,000? Because if you can pay off a house, for example, and this is a decision you're trying to make, put $100,000 in that side fund and have like an advisor, someone manage it for you and draw the mortgage payment out each month. Now you're debt free today because that 100,000 will continue to grow and compound at its full balance. And you're only going to draw $1,200 or $1,300 a month out of the account. You can have the effect of feeling like you're debt free because what you really are is cash flow free now, because that asset, that $100,000 is going to pay off that mortgage for you over the next 10, 15 years. And heck, there might even be money left over at the end of the day, right? But these are things where, if it's really if it's really an emotional decision, go with what makes you sleep well at night. There's some things that just money can't buy, and peace of mind can be one of them. But if it's the financial side, it's hard to kid yourself that paying off the house is the best goal for most people because of inflation. I mean, inflation devalues the dollar, and that stinks if you're going to spend money on something that you're buying in the future. But it's awesome if you have debt, because every year you don't pay that debt off, inflation is making the future dollar that you use to pay that off less. And that's why people feel like my payment doesn't seem as difficult now as it did 5 years ago. Well, why is that? Because inflation has eaten it away at 3 to 4% a year, and you're making a little more money in your job. It just gets easier. But that's the same thing for your mortgage balance. In a perfect world, you'd have interest only for 30 years and write one check at the end of your mortgage, and you'd pay 40 cents on the dollar on average for what you actually borrowed.
That's amazing. Just in the last 2 minutes there, the data, the knowledge you shared. And I mean, when you really think about it, paying off a $200,000 mortgage with $100,000, that's a great concept. We're going to continue our conversation, learn more with Todd Ballenger when we come back. Your Credit Matters. We're going to talk about, maybe we won't. We'll just give the plugs on it and continue our conversation with Todd. You can reach me anytime. Off-air number 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com, facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the numeral 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio, your home and mortgage connection.
Do you know a homeowner experiencing divorce? Do you know a real estate reference and the divorce decree could cost tens of thousands of dollars? A certified divorce mortgage planning and real estate report could save you thousands of dollars, and it's free from your local certified divorce lending professional. Reach out to Ron today. RonIsMyLender.com. Again, RonIsMyLender.com. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. The Your Credit Matters segment today being brought to you by CreditSanitizer.com. You have a credit report. It is wrong. What are you doing about it? All the credit reports are wrong. I've been looking at credit reports since the turn of the century, and I've yet to see one that's completely accurate. Maybe they're out there, but I haven't seen one that's completely accurate. I know a lot about credit reports. My own report is never completely accurate because they change it every time I get something corrected on there. And then they invalidate it or they make it incorrect. So get a hold of our Jeff over at Blue Water Credit. And I highly recommend, and I don't get paid for it, myfico.com, best place on the market to get information about your FICO scores. I get an update every single day, maybe 2 or 3 a day on what's going on my FICO report. Well, I'm a little odd because I'm manipulating it all the time or modifying it just so I can see what effect things have. But Your Credit Matters segment, again, brought to you by CreditSanitizer.com. Continue our conversation. Todd Ballenger is with us, Borrow Smart University. Great information. If you missed the last segment, you missed a lot. We're not going to recap it, but I'm going to tell you, Todd just told us how maybe you can get rid of a $200,000 mortgage with $100,000. Think about that concept. That's just that's like a mic drop right there, Todd.
Hey, I'm glad to hear it. Well, I'll give you, we used to call it the home stretch. And think about this concept. You do this at 50. You put away enough to cover your payment till you're 65. And then at 65, you roll into a reverse. And now you've got a reverse, which then defers your mortgage payments forever. So in theory, you could go through your last and most profitable 15 years of savings. Is for most people, it's 50 to 65. That's their highest income earning years. It's their biggest chance to accumulate. If you just sort of took the mortgage payment out completely, not only now, but forever from your planning, as you were saying, it's easier to retire when you have no debt. But why is that? It's because of the payment. It's not the debt. It's the cash flow that people really want. So a lot of these strategies, most people live lives of cash flow. They think about saving wealth for the future, but it's only because at some point they want to take the wealth in the future and convert it into cash flow. So I believe when you're managing liabilities, what you're really doing is managing cash flow and figuring out how do I do the best job to manage cash flow over my lifetime. And the largest expense for the average consumer, it eats up anywhere from 38 to 43% of your gross income is housing. So I loved it because much like you, I started out as a financial advisor and realized the biggest mistakes were being made on the liability side of the balance sheet, not the asset side of the balance sheet. Because most people were spending more money on their mortgage than they were saving in their 401k or saving for their future. So I wanted to start in an area where the biggest mistakes were being made. All mistakes compound just like interest, right? So the earlier that you can catch a mistake like that, the more time you have for the benefits to compound over the, again, 50, 60, 70 years you're going to be in a house. There are very few things in your life that you will have for 60 to 70 years. But for most of us, a house will be one of those things. You know, you're not going to have a dog that long. A lot of people have trouble keeping a wife that long. You're not going to have a job that long. I mean, what else in your life are you going to have? I mean, you had your parents for the first 20 years, whatever, until you moved out as you sat out of the basement. But once you move into your own house, I mean, you're going to have that, until you're done. So it ties with a long-term mindset and the fact that, again, small decisions compound tremendously over 20, 30, 40 years.
That's pretty amazing. And the other part of in addition to what you're saying, and I agree with everything you've said there, is that nobody really wants to help us with liabilities other than to give us more. Right? I mean, we've got financial planners that are out there looking to try and help with the finances or the money that we don't want to save or that we don't save. And we've got, every credit card company in the world, they want to give you a credit card as long as you can make a minimum payment that might keep you in debt for the next 300 years.
That's right. I say that, realtors sell real estate. Lenders tend to sell money, right? They lend money. Advisors manage assets. Well, why is it that segment manages and everyone else is sort of considered a salesperson? So people like yourself that are thinking about this and saying, I'm not going to sell liabilities, I'm going to manage liabilities, put you at least in the same category as the advisor, just the different side of the balance sheet. They're managing the asset side of the balance sheet, which is what's left over at the end of the month. You're managing the liability side of the balance sheet. And the thing about it, if you think about, because we were talking about cash flow, right? The money comes in and it goes to committed expenses first. You're going to pay for food and shelter and clothing and things like that first. The asset advisor is dealing with what's left over, right? So you get the first big slug, so to speak, of what's coming in on a cash flow basis as a liability advisor. So you can help people think about what is the highest and best use of that money, that cash flow, et cetera. And then that will create more that gets to go over into that asset column. And you're really creating more opportunities for that advisor to manage wealth.
That's a great thought right there, because and the part and that's kind of why I got into lending is I found out early on, and maybe you did too, Todd, is there was back in the days that I was at Merrill Lynch, they wanted us to have, minimum account size of $250,000 at the turn of the century. It's a lot of money now. It was a lot more back then. But I found that there was a lot more people that wanted to borrow $250,000 than had $250,000. Right. And it's easier to go and work with the people that want what you have or than the people that, don't have what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And when you think about borrowing, is you're taking an advance on your future lifestyle. When I borrow money for a sweater on a credit card, I'm saying I want that sweater now, and I'm willing to cheat my future self out of that money because I've got to pay it back with interest. And that's because most everything you borrow for depreciates. And historically, the only thing you can borrow for that historically over time has always appreciated is real estate. Like you can get lucky with a car. I got lucky with a car one time that ended up becoming a classic and it went up in value, but all the other ones I've always bought, they go down 20, 30% when you drive them off the lot if you buy a new car. But housing means it's the one thing I can borrow from my future self, enjoy the lifestyle today of living in that house, and then not cheat my future self out of having to pay something back that costs more than what I paid for it. And it's a very different way of thinking, but I'm always thinking about my future self because one day I'll be my future self and I don't want to cheat him. So I want to only borrow when it's good to borrow. And the house is the only thing that I found that traditionally allows you to do that.
It's great information. And the bottom line is what if you have more houses? So if you have that house and you've got that side account and you've got the payments being covered maybe by somebody else, maybe you have more houses and 10 years from now, that's throwing off even more cash and it deals with better cash flow, which is kind of where we started our conversation with Todd Ballenger. If you want more information on this, give me a call at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. And as always, I ask, set that first radio preset button to come back here and join Ron Siegel Radio, where we only speak about items affecting your house and your bank account. Thanks to all of our sponsors. A big thanks to Lovin and Sean who are engineering us today. And of course, a special thanks to you for spending all of your time with us, a little bit of your time with us. That's all for Ron Siegel Radio. Again, if you want to meet any of our guests, give me a call, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. And remember, make a lot of money so you can help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time on Ron Siegel Radio.
Over the limit, I'd like to call him something. I think I'll just call it a day.